In 1961, a hurricane tore through Galveston Bay and ripped the wooden fishing fleet apart at the seams. When the water finally went still, one boat sat untouched in the wreckage. It was made of a material everyone said would shatter like glass. That single photograph ran in every marine magazine in America, and the man who built that boat never had to advertise again. His name was Willis Slane, and he built the most respected name in American boating from a check slammed on a barroom table. 60 years later, that name belongs to people who have never set foot on a boat. This is how that happened. To find where it all began, you have to go back 2 years earlier to a bar on the edge of the Outer Banks. It was May of 1959, and a storm had pinned the local sport fishing fleet to the dock. The captains refused to risk their wooden boats in seas like that, and one of the men stuck on shore was furious about it. Willis Slane was a High Point hosiery man, heir to a textile fortune, an avid offshore angler who hated sitting still. He had recently run a small fiberglass powerboat down in Florida and come away convinced of something nobody believed, that you could build a big boat out of the stuff. So he slammed a $5,000 check on the bar of the Hatteras Marlin Club and said, "Let's build some boats that will go out." The people he said it to thought he had lost his mind. Some of them thought fiberglass was actual glass, the kind that breaks. He wanted a 41-foot boat made of it, built 200 miles from salt water in High Point, North Carolina. But High Point had something the coast didn't. It had furniture craftsmen, men whose hands already knew how to shape and finish to a fraction of an inch. Slane rented an empty Pontiac dealership and hired a young naval architect named Jack Hargrave. And on March 22nd, 1960, the first Hatteras rolled out. They named her Nitwits, a wink at the textile money that built her, and at every skeptic who said it couldn't be done. 41 feet, a 14-foot beam, twin 275 horsepower Lincoln 5 8 engines, and a one-piece fiberglass hull so thick the crew slapped it barehanded during the layup and added more glass wherever it flexed. She hit the water and Slane took 7 orders the same day. Then came the storm that turned a boat into a legend. Hargrave had a brutal way of proving his hull. He laid out panels of different fiberglass recipes on the ground and drove his car over each one. The panel that didn't crack became the production spec. That obsession got tested for real in 1961, when Hurricane Carla slammed Galveston Bay. The wooden hulls came apart. The Hatteras in the next slip rode it out without a scratch. The photo did the rest. By 1962, a single New York boat show brought in $650,000 in orders. By 1965, Hatteras launched the largest production fiberglass motor yacht in the world. That same year, on September 7th, Willis Slane died of a heart attack. He was 44 years old, and he had been building boats for only 5 years. He never saw what he started. What he started became something close to a religion. In 1967, a second plant opened in New Bern, on the Trent River, because the boats had grown too big to truck the fly bridges out of High Point. The lineup exploded, more than a dozen new models in 4 years. And one of them, the Hatteras 53 motor yacht, ran for 19 years and sold more than 500 boats. Surveyors still call it one of the most successful medium yachts ever built in America. By the early 80s, more than 1,000 people clocked in at New Bern. Sons learnt the layup from fathers who had learned it from men who stood beside Slane in 1960. Across its history, the company would launch more than 7,600 vessels. That was the empire. The men building it that morning could not have known that the people who would eventually own the name had never been on the water and did not care how a boat was made. But the men who built it would not be the men who owned it. In 1972, the boat ended up with a conglomerate called AMF, a company that ran on margins, not on salt water. To AMF, Hatteras was a line item, so the bronze fittings became plastic. The teak doors got thin, every dollar shaved off the build was a dollar back to the parent company, and within 2 seasons you could feel it in the boat. Then it got stranger. In 1985, a financier named Irwin Jacobs bought all of AMF, a $550 million company, for one reason. He wanted Hatteras, and its CEO would not return his calls. So Jacobs bought the entire company over his head, just to own the brand. The men on the new burn floor were now an asset on a balance sheet, traded between people who had never run a boat through a following sea. Brunswick came next. Then the federal luxury tax closed the original High Point factory. Then the recession hit, and the grandsons of the men who learnt the layup at Slane's elbow walked out the door. By 2013, the company sold to private equity, and a workforce that once peaked near 1,500 was down to 275. In May of 2021, Bass Pro Shops bought Hatteras. They promised $35 million in investment and 500 new jobs. The men on the floor cried, the same men whose fathers had taught them the layup, because it meant their own sons would have somewhere to clock in. Then, on October 30th, 2023, the day before Halloween, Bass Pro laid off about 80 of them. Off-duty police stood in the parking lot. The workers found out the same morning as everyone else, and Bass Pro's own website didn't even list the brand. Up the coast in New Jersey, the Healy family's Viking yachts never sold. Same name on the gate for 50 years, and today, Viking owns the convertible market that Hatteras invented. But there's one last detail. In 2013, the company tracked down the original nitwits and restored her by hand, repainted white with teal trim, exactly as she looked in 1960. She still sits at the new Burn factory, the soul of the brand kept alive even as the name passed from Rockwell to AMF to Brunswick to private equity to a phone number in Springfield, Missouri. Willis Slane has been in his grave since 1965. He built a name that men respected for 60 years, and the people who ended up owning it, the ones who broke it, never set foot on a boat. If stories like this one are why you're here, consider subscribing. We bring the history of the water back to the surface, one vessel at a time.